Professor Gurif, Ewart and Walla, they ganged up to eliminate him from medical practice in Calcutta. Because of this, Mahendra Sarkar decided to go for homeopathy in full swing, and he had taken his full training under Rajendranath Dutta, the famous homeopath of Calcutta, and then he came back with a bang for homeopathy in the city, and he became also a legendary homeopath in no time.
Dr. Sarkar had among his patients persons like Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Ramakrishna Paramahamsadev, and the Maharaja of Tripura. Except for his loss of faith in allopathic treatment, Mahendralal's regard for Western sciences was unswerving.
His main thrust was that the Indians were denied scientific education in India by the colonial authorities. Therefore, Mahendralal had already hit upon the idea of establishing a National Science Association from 1867 onwards.
Deriving inspiration from the Royal Institution and the British Association for the Advancement of Science and Activities and publications of Charles Babbage, the founder of the British Association, Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar started his campaign for an Indian Science Association. The August issue of the Calcutta Journal of Medicine of 1869 carried his vision under the title On the Desirability of Cultivation of the Sciences by the Natives of India.
He wrote his famous celebrated paper in Calcutta Journal of Medicine, declaring that time has come for indigenous research in India on modern science. And the Indians should be doing their own work with their own money and not depend upon the British government.
Encouraged by favourable public opinion, Dr. Sarkar also published an appeal to the elite classes of India to contribute generously to this cause. The response was overwhelming. The first subscription account was opened with contribution from Babu Joy Krishna Mukherjee, Raja Kamal Krishna Dev Bahadur and others. Dr. Sarkar also enlisted the support of such liberal persons as Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Keshav Chandra Sen, Krishnadas Pal and Father Eugene Lafont. The great rationalist Akhoy Kumar Dotto sent his blessings and all his money to Mahendralal Sarkar for his Science Association. Rajendralal Mitra, the great science pioneer and the former president of the Asiatic Society, also helped Dr. Sarkar. Mahendralal himself committed his life's savings. Once the launching pad was ready, Sarkar appealed to the Bengal government for support. But at this stage, Shishir Ghosh and his brother Motilal, who were the founders of the Indian League, placed an alternative proposal before the Lieutenant Governor, Sir Richard Temple. They proposed that a technical school in the lines of Technischen Hochschulen of Germany be set up.
In that historic meeting of 1876, Father Eugene Lafont, St. Xavier's College, played the main role, because he had suggested that Indians were equally talented in science, and therefore if they were given a chance, then they would also become a Newton or a Herschel or a Hertz. But that was not the sole argument. One of the best arguments was put forward by Rajendralal Mitra, where he says that, well, he had already tried the Mechanics Institute, and for that he had to hire experts from abroad, from England, and that was very expensive. And in 6 years experiment it was found that it was very difficult to train the artisans in that way. Therefore that project was abandoned. Therefore in the Mahendralal's National Science Institution, first of all, the scientists have to be created for India. There must be a scientific pool, and the Indian scientists would train up the artisan class in India. And that would be the best way, best permanent solution with a minimum expenditure.
Now Mahendralal said, we have nothing against industrial arts, industrial research, but there should be a separate body. And we want to stay separate, and we want to promote basic science, because without basic science you cannot have applied science, applied engineering.
Sir Temple, however, found merits in Dr. Sarkar's argument. He gave his blessings to the idea of an Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. The provincial government even offered a house at 210 Lobazar Street for the association. It was inaugurated on the 29th of July 1876. In 1884, the association got its own lecture theatre, the Albert Temple Hall, which was inaugurated by the Governor-General, Lord Ripon.
Father Lafont and Mahendralal Sarkar went on giving lectures regularly every week on the dot, on Thursdays and Fridays and Tuesdays, So it was a big show to start with. Then one can talk about the actual lecturers who came up. Jagadish Chandra Bose, as you know, delivered a series of lectures in IACS when there was no apparatus in Presidency College. So he loved to work in IACS because he had a lot of equipment. So Jagadish Chandra Bose, Ashutosh Mukherjee was giving lectures on mathematics. Pramodanath Bose was giving lecture in geology. So they were all the great people. Gurudasa Banerjee came up. And of course, after Mahendranath Sarkar died, we had C.V. Raman and Meghnad Shah, who did a lot of work for IACS.
The Maharaja of Vijayanagaram donated 30,000 rupees for the renovation of the old dilapidated building that housed the classrooms and the laboratory. This new building was inaugurated in 1891 and named as Vijayanagaram Laboratory. However, IACS did not have a smooth run, and Dr. Sarkar died a bitter man.
Somewhat later, in the year 1909, after long and difficult period of gestation, but developed on a pattern that is entirely different from IACS over the course of the century. And I am bringing these two institutions because these are the pre-independent, preeminent institutions which form the basis of science education of research in this country. Indeed, a comparative study of the growth and development of these two institutions may prove educational for those who seek to build new institutions today. In trying to piece together an authentic piece of the historic records of the two institutions where I have worked, and in attempting to create permanent archives for the future, I have realized that often history is not a subject of any significance within the precincts of science research institutions. Nevertheless, I ventured into scratching the surface of history for understanding and realizing how the evolution took place. So in many ways, there is much to be learned from the events of the early years of IACS and IASC. And let's now get into the common thread of these two institutions coming together. I go back to 1893, that is 17 years after Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science was established, in a boat that sailed from Yokohama, Japan to Vancouver, Canada, two great Indians, one a monk and the other an industrialist, met for the first time. The monk was none other than our own Swami Vivekananda, who was to take and interpret to the West more effectively than anyone else the religious and philosophical tradition of India. The industrialist was Jamshedji Tata, the father of Indian industry. As they got into talking, Vivekananda explained his mission of preaching in the United States the universality of all religions. That is his famous address in the University of Chicago. Jamshedji said he was in the search and equipment and technology that would build the steel industry in India and make India a strong industrial nation. You can connect in today's Make India mission with this same vision which was envisioned almost 125 years ago. Vivekananda blessed Jamshedji and remarked how wonderful it would be if we could combine the scientific and technological achievements of the West with the asceticism and humanism of India. Ironically, these two great men never met after that journey. But these moments, these are momentous occasions. This created history. These words struck a chord in Jamshedji's heart. 5 years later, Jamshedji's response came in a letter to Vivekananda, and I reproduce this letter below. And this is written from Bombay on 23rd November 1898. Dear Swami Vivekananda, I trust you remember me as a fellow traveler on your voyage from Japan to Chicago. I very much recall at this moment your views on the growth of the ascetic spirit in India and the duty not of destroying but of diverting it into useful channels. I recall these ideas in connection with my scheme of Research Institute of Science for India, of which you have doubtless heard or read. It seems to me that no better use can be made of the ascetic spirit than the establishment of monasteries or residential halls for men dominated by this spirit, where they should live with ordinary decency and devote their lives to the cultivation of sciences, natural and humanistic. I am of opinion that if such a crusade in favor of an asceticism of this kind were undertaken by a competent leader, it would greatly help the asceticism, science, and the good name of our common country. And I know not who would make a more fitting general of such a campaign than Vivekananda. Do you think you would care to apply yourself to the mission of galvanizing into life of our ancient traditions in this respect? Perhaps you had better begin with a fiery pamphlet rousing our people in this matter. I would cheerfully defray all the expenses. With kind regards, I am, dear Swami, yours faithfully, Jamshedji. So this is the exceptional act of philanthropy in those days, demonstrated by an industrialist to Swami Vivekananda. And this Swami Vivekananda actually was the best disciple of Paramahansa Ramakrishna Dev, whose personal physician was Mahendralal Sarkar. So there is a connecting cord, but Swami Vivekananda realized in order to materialize his dream, his vision, he has to take this to a different level where poverty is not struck. You need abundance in terms of resources. You need support from the industry, and there is no controversy in these traditions. We should not be bogged down in terms of doctrines of philosophies when we have to go to development and building of the great institution. And I take an account, this account of the birth and development of IAC authored by Subbarayappa in the Pursuit of Excellence, Tata McGraw-Hill, 1992. Here it says, Jamshedji Tata's initial proposal to pledge a substantial part of his wealth towards creating a research institute or university. The idea of a postgraduate research institution in the west coast of India must have seemed far-fetched in the 1890s. Remember, Bengal was ahead. 1876 already we have IACS. And they are talking about in the western coast, institution of another institution at a time when this university education had an extremely limited reach. Those days, we did not have big precincts like what we have today, not states. It was not an independent India. We had presidencies. Presidencies of Kolkata, presidencies of Calcutta those days, Madras, Delhi and Bombay. And Tata backed his vision with an unprecedented act of philanthropy and most remarkably did not want his name to be associated. What we see presently, everywhere you will see there is a mushrooming growth of a new university or an institution. And where the donor's name is inscribed there. Compare the philanthropy which we have seen. At that time, he did not want his name to be inscribed with the new institution, thereby paving the way for support from all quarters. This is the act that we must remember. And for this scheme to materialize, two conditions had to be met. First, an assured annual support from the government of India. I tell jokingly to my friend, Mahendralal Sarkar started this institute. That was one of the noble Sarkar, but Sarkar Raj continues. We are under Bharat Sarkar. So it will be continued tradition. That is government of India. But those days, government of India was controlled by the Queen in Great Britain. whose powers were vested in the British Viceroy in India, and this was essential to get an annual support. Second, the identification of a location and land grant was crucial to the implementation of this scheme. The British government's objections were overcome by 1905, and the grant of land from the Maharaja of Mysore was realized in 1907, culminating in the issue of formal vesting order in May 1909. Indian Institute of Science was born. Why I am telling you this? This institution did not have a land. This institution started in Bowbazar Street from the personal donation and meager resources of some noble individuals. Subsequently, the most influential chief minister during post-independent India, early phase of Bengal, Dr. Bidhan Chandra Rai, he made his donation of this land where we stand today, and that was the institution we got in 1948. Remember, this started in 1909, so the trajectory in terms of time you must compare for the growth and comparison today between these two institutions, and it's very important for us to compare. And the other thing I would like to call your attention to is the conception, Swami Vivekananda, who could not conceptualize this. I don't want to get into the controversies of the history, but you should know why Swami Vivekananda had to establish himself in Kanyakumarika and in the southern shores of India, in Mysore, because Mysore Maharaja was a great disciple and follower of Swami Vivekananda. And some of you may know, Maharaja of Mysore died in Kolkata. And actually, there is in his homage, there is mausoleum you can see in Burning Ghat of Kaurakoda, on the shores of Ganges. There was a deep connection. Mysore Maharaja gave 375 acres of land in Bangalore, which you see today as Indian Institute of Science. So this act of philanthropy has given the headway for IASC, which IACS could not get. IACS continues to remain in penury. And only recently, I am pleased to tell you, only this year, I have been able to get a 35 acre in Baripur, but that's only through government donations, government funding, the generosity of the present government. But continuation of nation building, continuation of the institution buildings requires philanthropy from all quarters, not from individuals, it also from industrialists, it's from businessmen, Maharajas, and above all, from Government of India and Government of Bengal. I told you that Jamshedji Tata was interested as an industrialist to get ideas. That's why he went to the West. All Tata family people, they were all educated in UK those days, United Kingdom. And his interest was to get enlightenment to build a great Tata Iron and Steel company. We know today Tata Steel is inscribed in various parts of the world. You know that Tata Steel has made foray into UK. In 1899, that time Lord Curzon liberalized mining laws in India and invited British industrialists to set up steel plants in India. Because in the minds of viceroys those days, Indians are natives. They are crude people. They are not capable of building institutions, building industries for themselves. Jamshedji submitted his proposal to set up a steel plant, and it was ridiculed by Sir Frederick Upthorpe, the commissioner of Great Peninsular Railway. And rhetorically he commented, do you mean to say that Tata's proposed to make steel rails to British specifications? Why I will undertake to eat every pound of steel rail they succeed in making. Now rest is history. Now Tata has made steel industry, which United States is now coming out. Prior to Brexit, you should know that Tata Steel has made sure that they want to come out of the United Kingdom, which has a great problem in terms of its economy. And post-European Union exit, it has other problems. But look at this situation. At one point of time, little over 120 years ago, the then rulers of the Great Britain, they were refusing to give a land grant, a license to Tata to form a steel industry. Tata ruled this same Great Britain. Let me tell you, several of my friends overseas actually making joke that post-Brexit, perhaps it would be sometime, Great Britain would join as a new state of India. But I would not go that much in terms of, this kind of childish enthusiasm. Let's go into the reality. Jane Tata died in 1904, unaware that his idea would indeed bear fruit. The tradition of philanthropy was firmly established in the house of Tatas when his sons, Ratanji and Dorabji, committed themselves to the vision of establishing a research institute. The story of the long struggle to ensure that IACS did indeed come into existence and its difficult years after birth are not well known. You have to go into the thousands of pages of the archives that is available. Both men, that is Swami Vivekananda and Jane Tata, undoubtedly saw the remarkable clarity, the need for India to build its own centers of excellence for research and scientific advancement. Sadly, both died several years before the founding of IASC. Tata in 1904 and Vivekananda in 1902. But that did not deter their determination and wisdom. And we know a few are to be found in the more recently created Tata archives in Pune, and of course in the libraries in London, which I had an opportunity to see in Royal Institution, which maintain much of the written record of nearly 2 centuries of British presence in India. As the institutional archives begin the slow process of collecting and cataloguing records that are more than a century old, I have realized that the story of the early history of Indian Institute of Science really centers around one man, that is Burorji Padsa. He was the secretary of Tata. And his complex and times difficult relationship with one Englishman, that is none other than Lord Curzon, the Viceroy, the Viceroy of India. By all accounts, Padsa was a remarkable man, intensely loyal to the vision of Tata. He worked increasingly to bring the projects of the Tata Steel Plant Hydroelectric Company